Are you a woman maybe passing through midlife and starting to feel like there's something missing, or maybe there's something more that you know that your life should be about? Are you ready to let go of feelings of blame, shame, and worry and regret and move into a life filled with clarity, joy, and fulfillment? One that you wake up to each morning and feel excited about? I'm here to talk to Susan Lazar Hart this morning about all of these subjects and more, about transitioning from our maidenhood to our motherhood, to our crone years, to this path that we're on as women. And I can't wait to share this conversation with you. So stay tuned. Every day there is a forgetting, and every moment there is the possibility of remembering. Remembering who you truly are, awakening to your body, to the inner world, to the experience of being alive. Here is where you find the beauty, the joy, and here is where you free your soma. I'm your host, Amy Takaya. I'm here to help you move from pain to power, from tension to expansion, and ultimately from fear to love. Good morning, Susan. How are you?
I'm absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much for having me, Amy.
Yeah, my pleasure. I was reading kind of some of the things that you speak about, that you share about, that you coach on, and I was very inspired. And I thought maybe we could start with a very simple yet deep question for you, which is, what does it actually mean to be present?
I love this question. It's actually a question we can ask ourselves as soon as we wake up every morning. What would I like to do with this day?
Mm.
Not what's my to-do list, but what's my intention with today? Is it to create greater? Is it to, you know, uh, get the things done that I know will have me feeling good about myself? And that's what being present is. It comes back into you because we all have those to-do lists. We all have those things. But it's often a reason why people say take a moment of quiet as soon as you wake up and get present. Do a little check-in, with your body, with your being, with your all your fields, your energetic fields, your mental fields. How would you like to feel today?
Mm.
And if we tap into how we'd like to feel, we can then get present and then ask a question. Well, would doing this actually add to my life and living? So I just started something new where I was working with a mentor, and she said, just check in with this every day. And so I have a list for myself of what I'm asking to create with today and how that will create with me a year from now. And so I know that by going through this check-in, it actually has me tapping into the future, but being present with how this is going to have me feeling today. Because if it doesn't feel great, it's not yours. You're probably doing it, creating your life for somebody else. Yeah.
Mm.
And so being present is really, really, really so paramount. We little babies are really present. When we're very little, we're very, very present, and we're told not to be present. Right? We're told to put our toys away when we're finished playing. Well, you're never finished playing when you're a little child. You're told to do things for other people, put your needs, wants, and desires aside to please other people, to reflect back to them that they're right about who
Mm.
you are. And so we lose that sense of being present. And so we lose a sense of presence of who
Mm.
we truly be. And so we hide that little joyous, juicy being for many people their whole lifetime. I mean, that's what transformational work is all about. It's doing the inner work, is being present. And nobody really asks you, what do you really want?
Mm.
Like, what do you want? And then tell me why you want that. Let's get present. How would that feel? What would that create for you?
Mm.
For the most part, people put themselves aside and say, I'll get to me later. Let me get this, and this done for that, and that. And really, just to take a moment every morning and ask yourself, so what would it take for me to be actually present with everything I'm being and doing today? And all the people I come in contact with, what would it take for me to be present? For some people, it's just stopping for a minute, putting your hand on your heart, taking some breaths. For others, it could be going for a walk in the morning. That's one of my favorites. It allows me to be at one with the world. Whatever that is for you, I urge your listeners to ask yourself, so what would that look like? What
Mm.
could that be? Yeah.
Beautiful. I love the way that you kind of described many inroads to this way of doing it, because I think that each person has their own configuration of how, right, the how that they go about this. Some people, it might be very kinesthetic and walking, physical
Yeah.
movement, yoga. I do somatic movements often first thing in the morning, laying in bed. I will just arch my back and then really, really slowly relax my back. And I'll do a series of those kind of movements before I get out of bed. And that's a tool that feels really appropriate to me at this point. For someone else, it might be journaling, it might be morning pages. I think that practice, right? Like, I love how you've kind of left it open to the how we go about it could be very unique and individual.
Yeah. Actually, I'll give you a very fast example. One of my daughters is 45 and she works during the day and she has two children and she's made a commitment twice a week to go swimming after work.
Hmm.
And so she was just saying how, she's there, she's in this lane and the super swimmers are in that lane. One of the super swimmers said to her, let's do 50. Let's do this. And she's like, no, 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 I can't. You're too fast. And she goes, come on. And she said, after being with these women who are swimming, who are just taking that time for themselves, all different body shapes, all different ages, she felt more present with her. And so then she could go back into her home and be more present with the children, with her partner, with the next day.
Hmm. Yes.
Yeah.
And what do you think is so important about, like you mentioned, mourning, and many people, I think that's a little bit like people are becoming more aware of that,
Mm.
over the last 10 years, that like having some kind of morning ritual, which we all have some kind of morning ritual. It's just whether that ritual is like intentional and giving back to us, or whether it's like, for me in my 20s, it was like cigarette and coffee. You know what I mean? Like we have a ritual, but how intentional and how nourishing is that ritual? What do you think is so particularly important about mourning?
Well, I always say how you start your day is how your day begins. So if you start your day with all the stories from yesterday and the day before and the day before and the day before, you're not only not creating with your future, you're not creating with your present.
Mm,
And so I think why is it important? That's when you enter back into your body from wherever you're drifting around at night. For some of us, we wake up at 4 in the morning. For others, whatever time that is, and it's just being really present and asking, okay, what would nourish this moment for me today? And I love that you mentioned that somatic movement. If you look at animals, that's what they do after sleeping. They do it. That's why in yoga we have downward dog, we have cat stretch, we have all of those movements because it is about, we're made out of ball and socket joints. And it's about those wonderful chemicals. When you begin your day in a sense of space, you're then encouraging all those yummy chemicals to also start blending and moving through your body and all the organs and the cells.
mm,
When you start your day with woulda, coulda, shoulda, you're creating an intention of contraction. And
mm.
then you wonder why your day isn't going very well, or why you're bummed out, or why you're
Yeah,
depressed. It's
yeah.
a gift. It's a gift to you to start your day with a way that I would say that shines a light on you and who
Mm.
you be and what you're asking to be in the world.
Yes. And I think that you're also pointing to some kind of, it's an action, right? It's a
Yes.
doing of something, because I don't know who else is listening that may have had this issue. I still have it from time to time, but I used to wake up in the morning just automatically sad. Like, I would wake up and the first thing I would feel was like sadness or worry. And when I was younger, there were times in life where I kind of let that consume me, especially if I had the day off. I'd just like lay in bed for hours feeling bad, you know?
Mhm.
And, early on, I started a pretty, dedicated yoga practice, and yoga would be the thing. Going to that class would be the thing that would get me out of bed and get me out of my funk, And this morning I woke up and I immediately had some worries. It was like whatever I hadn't processed from like things that I needed to do from yesterday were like swirling around in me when I woke up. But I've gotten to the point that even if that's going on, like I'm present with it, I'm going, oh, I woke up and I'm a little anxious, but I immediately do something. I do my somatic movements. I take some kind of action that is following that intention that I carry to have a, not just productive, but like productive for my soul kind of day, right? Where I'm going to show up for conversations like this. I'm going to show up for my clients. I'm going to show up for my son, right? So it's an action that you're also speaking to here. It's not like we think of mindset as maybe being like just in your head, but what you're describing is we're doing something. We're sitting down and writing it out. We're saying words out loud. It's an action. Did you know that your muscles are holding on to thoughts, memories, and feelings? If you have a tight neck or back, you're not just getting old, you're experiencing a buildup of tension from the life you've lived. Most people don't know this, but there is a part of your brain that can reverse and prevent chronic tension. When you relax your muscles, you not only move better and regulate your nervous system, but you also free yourself from the grip the past has over your body. So you can live with freedom, confidence, and enjoy your life now. How does that sound? Join me, Amy Takaya, and discover what my clients are raving about at youcanfreeyoursoma.com.
It's also, part of what you said is so important. It's about being in the question. So you wake up with a funk. Well, how many people have been taught that for the most part, we're all quite empathic? So you could ask, oh, is this mine? Somebody else's or something else? What am I picking up here? Is there something going on in the world? Hello.
Totally.
That I might be picking up on. And that's why it's really important to be with that and ask yourself, be compassionate and ask yourself, oh, okay, is this mine? Somebody else's, something else, work through that. That's why we have mentors to work through that with. And then ask yourself, so what would be my best step right now? Because you mentioned also about the depression it's about changing a habit because the mind loves a story.
Mm.
And so if we have that story, and I too went through many years of just sitting there going, staring at the wall, saying, is this it? Is this all there is? But really, that was an awareness. Now I'm so grateful for those times because that was an awareness. That was the way the universe was saying, like, hey, wake up. Your awareness is far greater than what you're trying to box yourself into. You don't
Mm.
belong in this reality. You never did. So let's shake it up.
I
And
love that.
yep, and let's be who you came here to be. It's going to look different than anybody else. And
Yes.
and it's not about saying, okay, every day I have to whatever that is, meditate, journal, write. It's body, show me what you'd like to do right now. Body, do you want to go for a walk? Body, you want to sit and meditate? Include your body in the energies of what you're asking to create with, because your body is in you, this infinite being. You are not in your body.
Yeah, I think it's, asking the question, what do I need right now?
Yeah.
Huge, huge, important question because it's going to change and diversify and be different if we ask that question. Like some days it might be the appropriate thing. It might be the totally self-loving thing, especially you have space for it, to just let yourself lay in bed a few hours longer, especially if you haven't been sleeping very much, especially if you've had a very busy week, right? But that's not going to be the recipe every single day. That's going to be to meet that need that day. That's part of that presence you're talking about, where we're responding to what's actually going on internally inside of us, right? I love also what you said about, the way that collective consciousness or the other people around us or our conditioning from our families and our parents, may be affecting our feelings and what we're waking up with. And that little bit of like, is this mine? I've been thinking about that a lot because I've been learning to regulate my nervous system more around financial stress, right? And actually, that was the last podcast episode for last season was all about that. Like, because I think that collectively, especially right now, a lot of people are experiencing stress, financially, like as a country, right, in the world. And we can tap into that consciousness and be stressed out, right, about our financial situation. Or we can ground ourselves in other ways of valuing our life, ourself, right? Our mission, what we're up to, right? And financial is just one piece of that, right? And so when I start to go, oh, like, I'm worrying about something financially, is that something that is mine, or is that something that a lot of people are doing? Is that something that I watched my mother do while I was growing up?
Yeah.
Right. And is
No.
that how I want to live my day, is being anxious about my finances? Or would I like to acknowledge, you actually are doing pretty well considering all the things that are going on in the world. You're making ends meet, like you're making a difference in other ways beyond just whatever number you produce, right? Like those kind of questions.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, it's about also asking for assistance.
Mm-hmm.
We're surrounded by assistance. We're surrounded by guides, by archangels, by this universe that's abundant. But we've been taught that that's not real. What's real is stress, blame, shame, regret. And so that when the mind hears blame, shame, regret, it's like, oh, I know what to do. Rather than, so, okay, these numbers aren't what I would like. What would it take for these numbers to shift and change? Would I be willing to have an abundant mindset in everything I be and do? And yes, you hit on it exactly. It's about gratitude. I'm so grateful for this awareness rather than what the bleep am I going to do? I'm so grateful that for this awareness, the universe sends you contrast.
Mm.
And or some people say, I have these problems. What if they weren't problems? What if they were an awareness? And
Mhm.
that's the only way you're willing to receive it right now based on the stories your mind is telling you.
Right.
And what if they're sent for you to leapfrog over into a totally different way of being? Body, mind, soul, financial, relationship, in every way. What could that look like? Because we have a choice. Everybody sees the world through their own lens. So what lens are you choosing to see the world through? And if it's not one that has to do with bringing in joy, then start asking some questions.
Mm. Lovely. And I think, you've spoken to this just a moment before as well, that, the function of and the power of suffering and pain to have us redirect and change where we're going, right? Because so many times we want to turn away from those negative feelings that you mentioned instead of recognizing that they are a catalyst if we dig deeper, that they are actually asking us to evolve in all kinds of ways. And like I love what you said just a moment ago, that may be the only way that your consciousness is ready to receive that message is through suffering or is through discomfort, right?
And a great question to play with is write down whatever that is that you see as problematic. Write it down, because once we write something down, not just type it, but write something down, it enters through the body, through the mind, through the chemicals, and then ask yourself, is this really true?
Mm.
And it's like, well, what do you mean, Susan? Well, okay, just play with me for a minute. Well, if it wasn't true, what could I be choosing? How could I be creating my business, my life, my relationship? What would I truly love? Because we again, the mind loves the story, so we get stuck in the box of this sucks. But if you're willing to play for a minute and say, okay, I've written it all down. All right, now it if this wasn't true, now write down, I'm so happy and grateful I am. It's 6 months from now. I am debt free. I'm so happy. And it's not like having magic wands. Yes, the universe rewards action. But once you have that different story and you start to repeat that story about the possibilities, your mind will shift from an old habit to a new habit. And so it's like, oh, okay, so all right, I read this morning I'm so happy and grateful. It's 6 months from now. I'm reading it every morning, and it's not a new thing. Bob Proctor, lots of the transformational mindset people from years ago started playing with this one, because what you put your mind on is what you create. Energy flows where your attention goes.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. I mean, you have obviously like spent a lot of time with these principles because you speak about it so naturally, right?
Mm.
But then you also alluded to many years of just staring at the wall, kind of locked up in your little ball of, your own flavor of suffering. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about your personal transformation process that leads you to where you are now.
Thank you so much. I'd love to. Again, how many people can relate to this? As a little kid, I used to get on my bike and ride around the block and kind of think, is this it? And then I get off my bike, go upstairs, turn the TV on, turn the TV off, get back on my bike, drive around again. It was like, I know there's something here. I know there's something here. This isn't it. And you go through the educational system, you go through all of that. And I was always told I was too much,
Mm.
and yet not enough. Like I was supposed to be put in the mentally challenged high school and then I was told, then I went through three schools in 4 years, and I was class valedictorian, and so I was always told you don't fit in, and the student body was like, yeah, you do. So it's a push me pull you that I'm sure a lot of us have gone through, where we're looking to fit into a reality that we don't actually enjoy to begin with. And so it's about, I think when I think of those times where I would just stare at the wall and saying, I don't get this at all. Like in my 20s and my 30s, I went back to school. I had four kids under the age of 12, and I went back to school and got my degree. It took me 10 years, and I ended up with a BFA because I thought, okay, I know there's more here for me. I don't know what it is. So I started off in women's studies, and then I was like, well, wait a minute, I'm a painter. And then I switched into painting, and then from there I went on to do my master's, and I still had that push me pull you with the faculty, and they're like, what's wrong with you? And again, I was asked to be the valedictorian for my master's. So it's you got to stand in your lane no matter how hard it is. And what gives you that resource, you do. Nobody else is going to do it for you. And so there I was, a painter, everything was fine. I'm raising my kids, I got my degrees, I'm, in galleries, and all of a sudden I create heavy metal poisoning. And
Mm.
I'm back to square one. Well, if I'm not a painter, if I'm not a printmaker, who am I? And all of a sudden, I heard myself asking this question, totally ignoring, no gratitude for what I had created or for these beautiful children or my partner or the abundance of our life. And I was like, oh my God, where's I am? I've been taught, I bought that I am a something, not an I am. And so I
Mm.
started investigating the body, soul, mind, energetic fields, you name it. I dove into it. I was so thirsty. And even now, I find I call it surfing the waves. Even now, what those like dark waves come along, and I'm like, oh, those actually aren't mine.
Mm.
They're either here for me to pay attention to and say, okay, what is this? What can I do with it? Can I change it? Is this even mine? Or they're that contrast
Mm.
for me to really take an aerial view of my life and living and see what's working, what isn't working, and do I require just to rest? Right? Is again, this reality is like do, 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 do. But those moments when we just take that time and appreciate who we are, what we came here to be and do, and know that we are not alone. I'm
Mm.
often asking my guides, okay, show me a sign I'm on the right place, and I get a little dime showing up. It's like, okay, angels, thank you so much.
Mm.
Right? This morning I said, okay, enough of the dimes. Can I see some feathers? So we'll see what happens. I'll let you know.
Awesome. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. It sounds like it's been really quite the unconventional, like, dance for you in
But we
terms of,
didn't,
go
yeah,
ahead.
sorry to interrupt you. I'm so excited about this topic. We didn't come here to be conventional.
Mhm.
And that's the exciting thing. That's why I created the congruent living method. And it because it's about being congruent in everything you be and do. And the method is simply to how am I waking up in the morning? How am I creating my day? Who am I being? And does that match the I am that's comes from deep inside? And if it doesn't, let's let it go.
Mm.
Because this is your one true life.
I love that. Yeah. I've always, whenever clients they will use the word, oh, like after we do somatic work and they're feeling so calm and present and alive, and they're like, oh, this must be what it's like to feel normal. And I'm like, no, this is different. This is natural. This is not normal. Normal is like what, the median of what people are experiencing. And you didn't come here for that. You came here for something extraordinary,
Yeah.
right? Yeah,
Yeah.
so we don't want to be normal. We want to be natural. We want to be connected to our true nature, which is kind of what you're talking about here with being versus simply
Yeah.
a painter or a mother or any of these labels that we have that we might put on ourselves that then come with this whole criteria of things to live up to or things to do, right? That long to-do list. And what you're speaking to is much more essential. It's being that present embodied self.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, just take a moment when you're in blame, shame, fear, regret. It's very easy to be controlled.
Mm.
So it's a great way for a populace to be controlled if they're kept in fear. One of the things that I've learned is that when I am in that anger, fear, shame, blame, regret, I am feeding the energies that are keeping people down.
Mm.
And so that's a choice. And so now I'll say, no, I'm not feeding you. Sorry, not happening.
Yeah, yeah. Or even the compassion and kindness, right, that we can generate for
Yeah.
ourselves when we're in that funk, right, is this like beautiful neutralizer, right? Like it's kind of that question of like, how do I hold these uncomfortable feelings? And you're bringing up a really great point that sometimes they're most of the time not really ours. Like we might have a story around it, but it's some very deep kind of universal pain that like humanity is going through, right? And when we can bring our self-generated love to the conversation, it's this neutralizing, and that's part of how we change the vibration of everything around us when we address our pain in that way, when we bring in that joy and that love that you're speaking of.
You just hit on something so primal, which is we're not taught to be compassionate with ourselves. We're taught to show compassion to others. But that, if you're feel like I know for myself, I was brought up in a really creative household, but very judgmental and argumentative. And having studied actually the compassion key, I realized, oh, that's not mine. And I can talk to that younger self and say, I'm so sorry you were taught to judge. So whenever I find myself judging now, I'll say, hold on. And I just take that moment, put my hand on my heart, and just reach out to that younger me and say, I'm so sorry you were taught to judge. I'm so sorry you were taught to judge. And it opens up my heart. It just changes the energy. And that's all it is. We were taught that. We were taught that judgment had value, that critical thinking has value, that blame has value. Well, that's an old story. How's it working for you?
Right, right. I think a lot of it, the judging and even critical thinking and all of that, there's a certain suspicious quality to it, like it's something that we do to protect ourselves and guard ourselves. And so in a way it's like we could think that we're taught to protect and guard by judging. And that can be helpful in the sense of like, you don't want to end up eating something that's poisonous, but there's other ways to tell whether something is poisonous by than just judging it. You can interact with it, you can smell it, you can sniff it, right? Like there's other ways of telling that are more about sensing rather than judging.
Well, we're not taught as little beings to be aware.
Mm.
What's your awareness? Right? What's your awareness? One of our kids loved bitter, and we were forever we were forever taking him to the hospital as a little being because he was always ingesting, going off into the fields, ingesting poisonous bitter berries.
Oh,
Right? They're bitter because they're poisonous, but he liked that bitter taste. And so it's like, what's your awareness? Well, let's look at the color of things. Let's look at this because the taste is not going to be helping you here. Right. And so instead of using the word judge, it's what are you aware of? And as little beings, we're never asked, what are you aware of here? When you go into your parents' room and it's the middle of the night and you say, there's a ghost under the bed, and that your parents tell you, don't be silly, you know, go back to bed, don't be stupid, don't be, there's no such thing. Well, the fact is, little beings don't have that veil and they do see entities. And
Mm.
so, how much greater would it be for you to take the child by the hand and say, let's go check, what's your awareness here? And so that then teaches the child that their voice is being respected,
Mm.
that they do have an awareness, and that it's not about blame or shame or ridiculing or judging. It's about acknowledging, oh, wow, I might be clairvoyant. I might, right?
Yeah,
Which most
well,
children are.
yeah, I think as you said before, we're born this way as these empathetic sponges that just pick up on all kinds of things, and that gets trained out of us. Exactly how you're describing, and that incident with a child, and there's something under the bed. I almost feel like what you described, it may have happened literally when you were a kid, but now it happens internally inside of us as adults, where there's some part of our awareness going, "Hey, there's something going on here. I need your attention. This
Yes,
situation feels weird to me." And
yes.
then we shut ourselves down. Oh, there's no reason to think that. Oh, you're being silly. Oh, don't worry about that, right? Like just ignoring that little voice inside that's saying, oh, something's up here. Like what you described of like, hey, let's go take a look, right? Maybe I should ask a couple more questions, right? That's beautiful. That's that idea of like being able to like allow ourselves that self-investigation of our own awareness, right? And I think that as you described this scenario, how many of us experience that as kids, like you said, of like, oh, I have this awareness, and our parents just immediately shut it down, right? Or our school teachers or whoever it might be.
And you know what? It's not on the topic, but it kind of is. It's what we have to be really aware of right now is that a lot of younger beings are getting all their information from a smartphone.
Yeah.
And so they're not taught to taste, touch, smell, look. And like even when I walk in the morning, I'll often see parents walking their kids to school and the parents are on a phone. And so it's teaching the child to go to a third party, which is a technical thing, to get their awarenesses rather than having a conversation, rather than being present, rather than there's so many rather thans. And I think it's so important as the nurturers that we are, that we take that time, not just for ourselves at the top of the day, saying, how would I like to start my day? But if you have little ones in the house, or older ones in the house. A lot of women are in a sandwich generation right now, and they're taking care of perhaps elder parents, and they've got younger ones. Introduce that time of
Mm.
just being present.
Yes,
Yeah.
I had a conversation recently with someone who said that the most important thing that we can do for our future on this planet as human beings is raise children who are allowed to be outside a
Yeah.
lot and be interacting in nature, and that builds what you're speaking of. It builds an awareness that is starting to become less and less in our world because of how much people are relegated to their indoor activities and their phones and their tablets and their screens, and prioritizing productivity rather than simply being, which is what nature does. It simply bees. You know what I mean? Yes, there's productivity going on in nature, but in a rhythm pattern, not constant and consistent, but rhythmically, right?
And nature is our greatest teacher.
Yeah. So you mentioned this before, but what is this congruency method that you are talking about? It's a method you've developed. It's kind of on the lines of what we've been talking about, right?
Very definitely. I play from a big buffet, right? There's not one thing because we're not one thing. And so being congruent is being in harmony with everything you be and do. And it's because there's a thread that runs through you.
Mm.
And it's a really about sitting down and asking yourself, okay, so what are my values? Again, I'm a big believer in taking that time and write down what are my values? And then ask yourself what you're choosing, is it congruent with your values? Because your values are your foundation, and your values could be integrity, humor, curiosity, uh, commitment, honoring your word to yourself.
Mm.
And so that's your foundation. So anything you choose from there is going to be congruent with, is that in integrity with what I'm asking to create in the world? Is a
Mm.
simple one. And so the congruent living method, it's ongoing living. It's how are you living your life? And so with that, it's really an awareness of there's nothing here that is meant to throw you. It's how you choose to be with it. Again, going back to when you're little, from 0 to 7, generally we're not taught how to be with ourselves. We're taught how to be with somebody else, how to please somebody else. So congruent living, it's again, it's living, it shifts, it changes, and it's about, is this congruent? Does this work with what I'm asking to create in the world?
Mm.
And know that your desire for who you be, what you be, and how you be is the only prerequisite to creating a congruent life. Like, what are you asking to create in the world? And does it match your values? Does
Mm.
it match that foundation that you have? If it doesn't, it's not yours. Like people, how many people fight to make something work? Well, there's no congruency there
Mm.
because it has to be when you're living a congruent life, you're really present with what it is you're asking to create with in the world. Now, again, once again, there you're going to have those moments where you surf the waves, right? And I say surf the waves because it's too easy to get tumbled underneath. And so when you have this foundation of, okay, this day isn't turning out exactly how I thought, exactly what I wanted. What can I be grateful for today?
Mm.
Just something little. Tap in, turn on to that. And I bet you'll notice it actually matches your values. And so that's what congruent living is all about. And one of the things that I encourage my clients to do is to really get present and ask a question. Um, I have the sticky note here I keep looking at. Just because you can't see what you're looking for doesn't mean you can't see what you came here for.
Mm.
And so being congruent is being knowing that you came here for greatness.
Mm.
And it's just asking yourself a question. Okay, no judgment. Does this match what I'm asking to create in the world, in my world? And if it doesn't, let it go.
Right. I think the bigger picture that you're speaking to, tapping into that mission or that bigger statement, and then maybe even just asking, because you mentioned this before, asking the universe, asking your guides, I don't know exactly how I'm going to get there. I don't know what the pieces are between here and this, but I'm here for this, right?
Yeah, I always, congruent living is living what you love and loving what you live. That's kind of my tagline these days because it's if you're not in love with your life, you're not being congruent.
Mm.
And so what we do is work with people to take it apart. And what would you really love? What would you love? Not what do I have to do? Let's play. Let's go back to that child and let's play. What would you love?
Mm.
And then let's see if we can live what you love. Because that's the joy. That's what has you waking up in the morning going, oh, all right, let's see what I can create with today. And that's what has you going to bed at night saying, cool for me. Whatever it was, no matter how big or small, with gratitude.
Mm. Yeah, thank you. This is, this conversation I feel like is sparking all kinds of like little bubbles for me because there's been all these kind of questions in my own world of, like these projects and things that I have going. And sometimes I feel like I have energy for it and other times I don't, and as you're speaking and I'm getting clearer on like, well, what am I here for? And it's like, oh, I've actually already created so much of what I'm here for. If I look back on like the journey and the path of like how things have gone over the last few years. Let's start there. Let's start with simply acknowledging and noticing, all of the different, you know, magic that has already been bestowed and created, and starting from that place of acknowledging what has already come before and acknowledging it with this gratitude and grace. It's like looking ahead to the things I'm currently creating, they start to appear differently, kind of like that I get to rather than I have to thing, right? And so I feel like that, this word congruent, the first time I really heard that word was, well, in this context at least, was some years ago through studying. I don't know if you're familiar with the Gene Keys and Richard
Yes.
Rudd, right? But he had a talk about congruency. And it was at a time in my life where I felt very incongruent. Like it was like my inner reality of like what I wanted from my life and the outer reality that I was experiencing. Like there was a massive disparity. right? And so hearing that, that word and thinking about that idea and these ideas that you're now presenting to me, it's like when we are living in that way that is very incongruent, and someone who's listening to this podcast right now listens to you talk about it, it can almost be like painful. Once again, that way that pain drives us forward to like our next evolution, to mutate something, because it's like, oh, like you wake up, you have that moment, you're like, I'm actually not congruent. And how do I get there? How do I find that congruency, again? And so, yeah, listening to you, I feel like I'm taking like a little journey, and maybe other people are too, through all the things that they have, done over the last, say, I mean, I'm thinking back to like pre-pandemic, and then the pandemic and what that did to us as a collective. For many of us, it pushed us in the direction of more congruency. Would you agree?
Absolutely. And I would say um, it's interesting to be witness to what is occurring now that we're 4 years post-pandemic. Is that about
Yeah,
right?
almost five.
Where people are lost
Mm,
because they had that zest. They did the pandemic thing and they had the zest, and a lot of people started businesses, and a lot of people said, "Oh, I can do this." And people went for walks in the forest who never had done that before, or whatever it was. And now they're like, "Okay, I was depending on this exterior thing to fix me, to do it for me, and that's gotten a bit stale now." And there's a huge movement. When you talk about Richard Rudd, Pam Gregory, there's a huge movement now of information out there. I mean, that's why I wrote the book Breaking Free, because now was the time. And I wrote it in chapters so that at the end of each chapter, there's a journaling portion,
mm,
just to take the time to be with these questions that we're playing with today. Because if you're not willing to be in the question, if you're not willing to ask a question, the information coming in will be someone else's information. If all you're looking for is answers, they're out there. Everybody's happy to give you an answer. You're the only one that can actually sit with the question
mm,
of, does this information nurture me? Does it spark? Does it send a spark? I was asking something this morning. I was up since 4 o'clock this morning. And all of a sudden, I hit on something about angels. And I started listening to this information about angels. And I'm like, oh, yeah, that's just what I needed to hear today. So if you ask, you'll find that information. And the information is a springboard. It's not an answer.
mm,
The reason why you're hearing that information is because you've been asking questions.
mm.
And then ask, okay, will this work for me? And if
Interesting. That
not,
makes, go
yeah,
ahead.
if not now, show me when the time is.
Mm. Yes, it makes me think that unconsciously we must be asking certain kinds of questions unconsciously that are leading us to our mindset, like you said, of blame, shame, worry, and regret. That there are unconscious questions that we're asking, kind of like the "is this all there is" kind of question. And what you're speaking to is starting to be more intentional about the questions that we ask. And so the feedback coming in is actually in alignment with what we really are curious about, not what
Yeah.
we're resigned to, but what we're actually excited and curious and longing for answers to these questions, right?
Beautifully said. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We're again, once again, at a very young age, we're indoctrinated to that we have to have an answer. Who did this? Oh, okay. How am I going to answer this? If I say I did it, am I going to get in trouble? I mean, it has nothing to do with anything
Mhm.
except for someone else's response to you. You're entrained to respond to somebody else's response
Yeah.
rather than being present. And that's why being present for so many people right now, it's like, oh no, I got lost in the Zoom box, right? During COVID, where I could watch this and learn this and do this and do that. Nobody said anything about me actually stepping out on my own
Mm.
and actually testing out, does this work for me? Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, so you kind of almost think of this phase that we've been in post-pandemic has been kind of this experimental process. And right now we're about to hit 5 years. What do you think is kind of the next step for people who have been building, their business or building their, awareness sense that, kind of collective trauma. And then now, as you said, people are becoming a little bit scattered and lost because they don't have that, that massive challenge to respond to interact with. And they're finding they have to kind of step into their own energy about this, right? What do you think is their next step?
I would say go out 3 years from now.
Mm,
What would you love? Okay, you're here now. Go out 3 years from now. What would you love? And if 3 years is too much, go out a year from now. What would you love? What does it taste like? Who are you being? What are your friends? What kind of income are you creating?
mm,
Do you still have your business? Have you let go of your business? Do you still have your relationship? Have you let go of your relationship? Does it bring you joy? Right? Does it match your foundation, your values of who you are in the world? There's a lot of people who are really catching on to that there's far more greatness here for us than we are even aware of. And that's a very exciting time where there's more and more talking of, Pluto just entered Aquarius. And this is like, hold on to your hats, babe. It's going to be an interesting ride. We know what happened with Aquarius in the 60s, right? With revolution, evolution. So be part of that because you are part of that. So I would say go out. How is it playing out? Where do
mm,
you see yourself? And with gratitude, like we were just talking about, for what brought you here right now to this podcast, to this discussion. What would I love? Write it out.
mm,
And then ask again, is this really true? Would I really love this? So, I have clients coming to me and I say, what would you love? Well, I'd love to make $1 million. Okay, what would that bring you? And then what would that bring you? And then what would that bring you? Because when people go down into the layers, then all of a sudden they become aware, they start feeling.
mm,
It's no longer the exterior. This is the relationship. I'd love to have a relationship, or I'd love to have money. They start feeling what that would bring them.
mm.
And that's where you want to begin, right? We're heart-centered beings. Everything comes from the heart. So if you're looking at yourself a year from now and none of it taps in with your heart, ask yourself, okay, what would that create for me? And how
Mm.
would that feel? And
Right.
really tap into that, how that feels, because we are feeling beings.
Right. Yes, because that kind of like love and excitement is unstoppable,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, beautiful. Maybe you can also speak a little bit, with everything we've been talking about, there is a strong focus in, your sharing and in your work on women, and especially women at midlife. What do you think makes this kind of work so imperative for a woman at midlife?
Well, I think, I always say I work with women who wake up in the middle of their lives saying, what? What happened? Like I thought what happened? And we do that many, many times. Like I did that when I realized I'd married a sports fanatic and I was alone all summer with these 4 kids. I'm like, okay, no, okay, I'm going back to school. And then when I got heavy metal poisoning, okay, let me dig deeper and see what else is possible. Then I went back to university and got a degree in coaching and counseling. And then, okay, that's their view. Now, what else is here for me? And so we're the only creatures on the planet that think everything has to be the same. It's not true. So I would say what attracted me to are these generally when you wake up in the middle of your life and you ask what else is possible. Okay, now we're talking, right? It's not, oh, story, story, story. In AA, they say, poor me, poor me, poor me, another, right? It's not that at all. It's about, are you ready for a shift and change? And if that excites you, what stories are you holding on to that are holding you back from being you? And let's see if we can shift those together one step at a time. And that's what I love about working with women is that when they come to that place, they're eager, they're
Mm.
ready, they're thirsty. I've been there and gone through it and continue to go through. As I say, it ain't over till it's over. And then when it's over, it's not over. You're just a spirit and you choose another body or not.
Right, right.
So I come with a wealth of yeah, I've been there, done that. I know what you're talking about. And I think that's so important when you're looking for a mentor or a coach to for somebody who's not far away from where you are, who's been in the trenches, who's worked through it and continues because we all continue to work through this amazing journey called life.
Mm.
So let's do it together.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I think what you're speaking of is the excitement and the I'm ready to take the steps, to take the responsibility, to shift things. That I think in midlife, what's so poignant about that is that we've already gone through, in human design or even in astrology, you could say like our victim years, when we're under 30 years old, where it's kind of like life is happening to us. And there's this kind of wrestling to like, become a person that we go through from like maybe, age 20 when we're out of our, adolescence and teen years into like, turning 30 and finishing our first Saturn return and all of that. And then there's that period, between like 30 or 40, 45 years old where it's like, okay, now we're doing it. We're doing it without that like sense of being a victim where life is happening to us. We've taken the responsibility. Maybe we've already, started taking on raising children, creating, more people in the world. And so it makes sense to me what you're saying about that eagerness and that willingness to really go for it, right? And also that waking up, that midlife question of like, is that this all there is? Is this what I meant to do with my life? And I think that, there is a unique kind of way that that shows up, especially for women. Men have it too, but there's a unique way that that shows up for women that I think, you're really speaking to very well on in this interview. It's coming through that you went through that process yourself and that you know what it's like, as you said, to go through the trenches and to come out the other end with a sense of purpose, right?
And yeah, and purpose is, you know, we're taught to look for our purpose.
Mm,
Well, the truth is we came here on purpose. So once people are like, what is that? What? If you start, you breathe on purpose. The first thing that I can encourage people to do is stop looking for a purpose.
mm,
You are here on purpose. Let's congratulate you.
mm,
Let's celebrate you. And then what would what would fill this out for you? This life, this journey we call life. What would fill it out for you? What else, I've worked with people who have gone back and created a totally different career. All of a sudden they started in this and they're interested in that. I've worked with people who after they raised their children, they never left their home again. And so it's baby steps, baby steps. How do you indoctrinate yourself into a culture that is not necessarily opening its arms to meeting new people
mm.
because everybody's at home streaming. So it's what step can I take? What step can I take? Well, what are you interested in? Right? Now's the time. What you were interested in before shifted and changed. People always come up to me all the time. So are you painting again, Susan, with a kind of a pained look on their face of empathy? And I'm like, well, I'm writing books and I have an academy and I'm writing newsletters and do videos and they're like, oh, but you're not painting. Right? Because that they've decided that's who you are.
Mm, mm,
And so I think as humans on this planet, we shift and change all the time. And it's the willingness to actually let people know it's okay.
mm,
And that's the joy that I have when I work with women who come to me and they're caught up in those stories. And so they have no sense of who can I be now? And then I see them blossom and bloom and have a sense of, oh, this is how I create a life that I love. Oh, okay. And it's one baby step at a time.
mm,
And it's about gratitude and appreciation. And again, it's about being in a community where you're supported and you're not alone. And that's, again, so important. We're not meant to live alone.
mm.
We're not. Look at flock of geese, a herd of the pride of lions, right? Like, what are we, a flock of humans? I mean, like, right? We're not meant to live alone. We're meant to share in the joy and the feels. Right? And that's like we are magic walking.
Absolutely. Yes. And I absolutely agree with this idea of purpose being innate. I love that. And I think that you said very well, we look outside of ourselves for that purpose, right? Or we look in other people for that purpose. We think it's something that has a certain phrase around it, like painter, yoga teacher. That's my purpose. Or artist. And actually the creative force, or that life juice that is, as you said so beautifully, being here on purpose, right, is innate. And so it can take many forms throughout our life. And I absolutely also agree about community being essential and important, because that's part of how we grow and evolve and understand ourselves, is through witnessing other people, through sharing and being witnessed ourselves. And I think it's wonderful that you're creating spaces for that. Yeah, tell us a little bit about your academy.
Thank you. That great segue. That's why I created the Congruent Living Academy for people who are actually interested in personal self-transformation and willing to deep dive. And we get into those topics, and we meet the first Tuesdays of, it could change to Thursdays of every month. And we get together, and it's an hour of what is it that you're asking for? And we start with a C, with congruent, with choice, commit, create, connect, right? We're not taught to connect to our own voice. We're taught to connect to others, FOMO, fear of missing out. And so we really get into these topics. And it's absolutely fascinating and wonderful to see the shifts and changes in this supportive community in which you feel safe by asking any question you want to ask. And if people want to go to the website, susanlazarhart.com, they can go to Congruent Living Academy, and would love to have you join us. It's really, what they say, when two or more are gathered, right? We create. And
Mm,
that's what it is. It's a, as the members say, this is our community. I look forward to this every week. And I do, and they do, because we have this connection of doing the inner work
mm,
and the aha moments, and seeing how that plays out for the rest of the week. And then come back with your questions. And what is it that you would love to create? What could that look like? It could be personal, it could be spiritual, it could be financial, it could be relationship wise. It all comes back to you.
mm,
Who are you being? And what needs to shift and change in the way that you see yourself in order for you to achieve what you came here to be and do in this
mm.
lifetime, in creating a life of joy.
Fantastic. Oh, I love that. Is this kind of like a membership thing where people just can jump in
Yeah.
at any time? And then
No,
you said it's weekly?
it's a membership. It's a 9 month membership.
Oh, 9 month.
And,
Okay. Nice, a
yep. And
container.
it's a
It's like 9 month
commitment.
container.
Yeah, it's a commitment because we get so personal,
Hmm.
uh, not to scare people off, but because this is a safe place.
Yeah.
And so to have somebody just come in and go out actually wouldn't work. And then the way that I've created it, we go through each letter of congruent.
Mm,
O for owning your voice, N for navigating through the rough times, G for growth. Where do you see the growth now? We've been together for 3 months. Where's the growth? What would you like to change and shift? R has to do with reflection,
mm,
right? And refilling. How many of us know how to refuel ourselves? And again, ending with a T for trust.
mm.
Something we weren't taught to do. We weren't taught to trust our knowing. We weren't taught to trust in our awareness. We weren't taught to just see how it works out. I always say present over perfect. Give it a shot. Let's see.
Yeah, I love it. I'm a long form kind of like healing project person to myself. I have a somatic education program that's 6 months. And so I absolutely relate to what you're talking about, like having a container that takes people through a journey, right?
Yeah.
You get to see such incredible transformation, because when someone, values themselves and steps into a space like that and says, I'm doing this and I'm prioritizing this for the next 6 months, for the next 9 months of my life, right? Even just that alone, right? And then all the other things, of course, that they end up doing, that they end up connecting and they end up, piecing together. Like that's the kind of like transformation that I think is, it's a lifelong value. I think that we can do cool things in like 6 weeks, right? We can do fun stuff. Yoga training that's a month and a half, 2 months long. Sure, lots of cool stuff can happen. But when you take on a larger chunk of time, like you're speaking to, it's inevitable. The shift is deeper and it's more biochemically sound because our bodies need time to process and adjust to new information. Sometimes it's too much too soon when we do something, that's 4 weeks long and very intense. We need that slow burn to create long-lasting changes in our brain structure.
Well, the other thing too is the brain likes constant space repetition.
Mm.
So, when you try something, oh, it didn't work. Okay, did you give it a chance? So part of this demand in the Congruent Living Academy is to honor your word to yourself. So, for instance, when people say, "Oh, I'm going to go to a yoga class twice a week," well, I'm in the second week and I don't really feel like it, and blah 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 blah. You're telling yourself, you're leaning into a story, an old story, which is, you see, I can't trust you. You
Mm.
see, you never finish anything. Rather than, oh, I might feel like crap, but I'm putting on my yoga stuff and I'm going to yoga, whatever that is. I always put my shoes out in the morning and I go for my walk, no matter what it looks like, no matter what it takes, because I honor my commitment to me. And that
Mhm.
the brain goes, oh, okay. This is okay. This feels good. Let's go for those good feeling chemicals, whether it's yoga, whether it's journal writing, whether it's meditation. And you just, sometimes tick it off, right? Tick it off on your calendar. Yeah, I did that. So then you can tell yourself, I'm the kind of person that honors my commitment to me.
Mm.
Because nothing, it's like you can't plant a seed in the ground and then turn around tomorrow and say, where's the carrot? Right? It needs nurturing, it needs nourishing.
Yeah.
So do we. So that commitment to yourself is huge. And
Mm.
then you start to learn, oh, I'm the kind of person that can count on myself.
I
Now what
love
else could I
that.
create?
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love that. Description of the carrot and the nurturing and the time that it takes, and the saying yes to ourselves. In so many ways, I think that self-discipline has the capacity to be an incredible self-love practice, as you're describing. And I think that, in our, usual conditioning around discipline, we think of it as something we have to do that we don't want to, which is a completely different thing than what you're speaking to. So it's a different face of discipline, right?
Well, again, going back to that little being, you're disciplined for someone else.
Hmm.
You get up and you go to school because you have to, unless you have the good fortune of being homeschooled, right? But you're disciplined to please other people.
Hmm.
So you become a disciple of other people's needs, wants, and desires.
Yeah.
And it does take um, desire to shift from who you were to who you're asking to be,
Mm.
and gratitude for who you were that brought you to where you are now and what you're asking and who you're asking to be. Because all of those trials and tribulations gave you that inner strength to be
Right.
here right now.
Yeah, it gave you the wisdom. They're your foundation of all the
Yeah.
things that you've already learned that go into the next step, that are part of that next step. Beautifully said. Yeah, well, this has been such an amazing conversation. You mentioned your website and the academy. When's the next round of your 9 month in program starting?
It's starting in January.
Oh, cool. Right on.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's
Yeah.
the date in January?
Hold on 2 seconds and I'll give it to you. It is getting my calendar up. It would be on the 7th. Either the
Nice.
7th or the 9th. Could be the 7th or the 9th. I'm still playing with the energy of those two. So, interesting. Yeah, it'll be on the website, and I would say let's go for the 9th, which is a Thursday. So it sounds like it's the cohort that is now in the academy will stay on a Tuesday, and the new cohort will stay on a Thursday. And that's the way you play with energy.
Yeah.
Just like that, just testing it out, saying, oh, okay, what does that feel like? Checking it out in your body, and then saying, oh, okay, this is what it's asking to be. Don't have to ask why, doesn't matter.
Mm, fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, where can people find you? You mentioned your website. Are you on social media? What kind of platforms do you
Yep.
use to share?
I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. I'm on, yeah, SusanLazarHart.com is my website, and you can find all the links and everything over there as well. Yeah. And I think,
Fantastic.
yeah, the Instagram is Susan Lazar Hart Coaching.
Right on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. And I have lots and lots and lots and lots on YouTube. So I've been playing with YouTube with videos for about 10 years.
Oh,
So
fantastic.
go to Susan Lazar Hart Coaching YouTube, and you'll find uh, pretty well any topic you've ever wondered about you.
Love it. Oh, I love that. Yeah, full of resources here. So,
Definitely.
are there any last words of wisdom or prompts that you might have for our audience who've been listening today?
I would say be willing to ask a question. Now, do these pants make me look fat is not a question. Be willing to ask a question of just before you go to sleep, even ask, okay, what would I love? I'm not sure. What would I love? And you'll be amazed what you wake up with in the morning. Give your angels work to do, give your guides work to do. But it's about being in the question of your life and living, not in a way that has doubt, but I wonder
Mm,
in wonderment. I wonder what this could create. If I choose this, what would that feel like?
mm.
Um, yeah, thank you so much for this conversation. I feel like we could go on and on and on. I appreciate you so much, Amy. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Yes, it's been lovely chatting with you. And for those of you who are listening today and you want to learn more, check out Susan's offerings. I'm definitely going to go check out the plethora of YouTube videos that you just mentioned. And yeah, stay
Oh,
tuned.
sorry. You know what? I just realized I have it's called Transformation Toolkit.
Mm,
And it's divided into two parts, and it's a gift. And it has to do with the cycles that we get caught up in. So the first part is a cycle breaker quiz, and the second part is just a 5-minute little tool that I give people to break out of those cycles. And you can go to susanselfcheck.com.
mm,
And that,
fantastic.
yep. And it's fun. It's just for you, just for fun to play with and see, well, am I actually living congruently or not? Like what's going on? And what cycles am I caught up in? So it's kind of fun to play with. Yeah.
Right on. Yeah, say that again. Say that website again for everyone.
SusanSelfcheck.com.
Love it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, I will be, yeah, I'll be looking at your YouTube channel. For those of you who are interested in learning more from Susan, reach out on her website. And yeah, we'll chat again soon, Susan. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Hey there, friend. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I would love to hear your thoughts. Follow me on Instagram at Amy Takaya and send me a DM about this episode. I'd like to thank you for being part of this somatic revolution. And if you'd like to support the podcast and help more people learn about somatics, consider leaving a review or a rating. And finally, if you'd like to have the experience of relief in your tight hips or back and learn to understand what your body is really saying to you, visit youcanfreeyoursoma.com. I can't wait to share with you what is truly possible. Bye for now.